Either this and Matt once again. We're about to another review of another horror film from the 80s, and this time it is Friday the 13th Part 2. This time directed by Steve Miner, who he also did Part 3, he did Lake Placid after this, House, Soul Man, and a few others. Halloween H2O. And of course the first Friday the 13th was a huge success, so immediately they wanted a sequel, so that's why a year later you had this film. Now of course Pamela Voorhees was dead, you had Jason as a kid, mainly saw him in a nightmare scene at the end where he pulled Adrienne King into the lake, and they're like, hey, let's go on that route. Of course people thought behind the scenes, this is a dumb decision. It's one of the reasons why Tom Savini did not come back to do the effects and went on to do films like The Burning and The Prowler for effects. But it worked out well, it was a success, and then you had Part 3 and Part 4 and so on. And Friday the 13th Part 2, the plot, another bunch of counselors go to Camp Blood, or at least Camp Blood is nearby. And a grown-up Jason Voorhees, this time in a sack, similar to the film The Town That Dreaded Sundown. He starts killing people, and that's really the plot. It's simple, it's to the point, and I thought the cast did well. Adrienne King comes back to play the character from the first film. The opening is one of the few issues I have with it. Granted, there's the logical issue is how the fuck did Jason find her? What, did he look her up in the phone book? I could just picture Jason just looking up shit in the phone book. Or osmosis, or he read the newspaper, he watched the news. I don't know how the hell he found Alice, Adrienne King's character, and then killed her off, which sucks because it makes the ending of the first film kind of pointless. Like, she survived all this. And then the movie says like 2 months later is when she disappeared. So it makes the ending of the first film pointless. You didn't even need the opening, to be perfectly honest. You did not need Adrienne King in the film. Literally, you just have a dialogue like she moved away, changed her identity, no one knows where she is. Or not even mention her at all. I don't think people would have had a problem if you didn't mention her at all. It's not like they mention Amy Steele. Well, they kind of do, but in Part 3, they only mention it where they showcase the ending of Part 2. It's not like they mention the Dana Kimmel character Part 3 at the end of Part 4 or beginning of Part 4, anywhere Part 4. That's what I mean, that you don't have to. So honestly, I think the first 5 or so minutes could have been cut out and just start with Jason gets up, you have the not Jason gets up, but just, did you have a random kill, someone in the woods fucking around and Jason kills him? You didn't even do it in the same way. So that's just one little nitpick. You could have cut the first 5 or so opening minutes. Because that will eliminate the logical issues of how the hell did Jason find her. And, killing off Adrienne King, it didn't really... Did it really do anything for the story? No, just negates the ending of the first film. So, yeah, I mention that prominently right now because that's how the movie begins. But after that, I liked Amy Steele. In fact, Amy Steele is one of my favorite actresses in a slasher film. I really liked her in this and in April Fool's Day. I liked her character. I know there's talks of her coming back for Part 3, but I think she said no and she regrets that decision. I think one of the ideas for Part 3 was that she was in like a hospital, or I forget the whole details. I don't know about hospital because that'd be too much of Halloween 2, but I don't know the whole thing. But I liked her character. Her character's a little bit of a psych major, so she uses that in the finale to sort of trick Jason. As strange as that sounds, but I thought it worked well for the movie. It's definitely a memorable part of the franchise. To the point that in the Friday the 13th Nintendo game, there's a point where you could wear I believe there's a point you could wear the sweater. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm thinking of the newer game where you could put on the sweater and I don't know. Maybe it's in both. I don't know. I haven't played the Nintendo game in forever, and I've never played the newer game. I've seen people play it briefly. But I like Amy Steele. She arrives later than the other counselors. The counselors, you have one guy in a wheelchair. You have one guy played by Russell Todd, who I saw during this marathon at the very beginning of He Knows You're Alone. And I believe he was also in Choppy Mall. You have John Furey as Paul, which his character disappearing is a weird thing at the end too. That's probably my other nitpick, is the very end of the film. It's funny, like my two nitpicks is the very beginning and the very end. Everything in the middle I like. And I'd probably say despite those, I like this more than part two. I like this more than part one. Because although I do like Adrienne King, I don't know, I do like Amy Steele more. There's something about her appeals to me. I think Jason in the sack over the bag over his head, I think is a much more scarier image than an old woman. No disrespect to Betsy Palmer, I think she did a great job in Friday the 13th one, but I do think Jason in the sack head is a more intimidating killer. Harriman Ferdinand did another good job on the score. The kills I thought were pretty solid, like they were in the first one. I think the kill that stands out the most is the wheelchair guy, which shows how don't give a fuckus that Jason has. He's like, I don't give a shit you're in a wheelchair. I'm going to put a machete into your head and you don't roll down backwards in your wheelchair. Fuck you, ladies, fuck you and die. So Jason don't give a shit. Other death scenes, you have the guy that gets in the rope trap and gets his throat slit. So, hey folks, Jason actually did do traps. I know that's one of the complaints about the 2009 film. Oh, Jason doesn't do traps. I saw this trap here with the rope. I mean, that's a trap. A cop gets a hammer to the back of his head, which is funny because a very similar death is to a security guard in Halloween 2. And they came out, I think, the same year. So it's funny, like both Jason and Michael Myers kill one's a cop, one's a security guy with the back of a hammer to the head. I'm like, that's really kind of convenient. And the similarity. A couple gets killed in bed with a spear, which I know that was a bit cut back because the MPA were mad that so much gore got put into the first film. So this is when they were really trying to cut down the gore. But the hilarious thing is when you saw like the VHS tape or some other things, there'd be a picture of that scene where you see the spear inside the back of the guy when he's on top of the girl. But yet that shot is not in the movie, but it's in so many of the production stills. So it's like, okay, I could be wrong. I swear it was on the VHS on the back. I could be wrong. I don't have the VHS. Those who do, you can confirm or didn't, say I'm right or wrong about that, but I know that production still's been out there, so it's okay for the production, but just not in the movie. You have the remains of this little dog, so I guess like Michael Myers, he got hungry. I was talking about why I prefer this over the first film. Like I said, I like Adrienne King, but I like Amy Steele more. I like Betsy Palmer, but I would say I like Jason more. And again, the sack over his head is a more scary figure than an older woman that somehow, even though these are all fantasy, it's more believable that Jason can do all this shit than a 50, 60-year-old woman. Which a guy actually said a funny comment like maybe she took some steroids. But Mrs. Voorhees took a lot of steroids for Friday the 13th to do all that. I believe that was DJ Donnelly. I could be wrong. If so, I apologize. But it's like, yeah, did Mrs. Voorhees take a lot of steroids at the end of the first film to do all that stuff? But yeah, like Jason, it makes a bit more sense. And the finale is a bit more interesting. The chase scene because you have a stuntman. I forget the actor's name. Can't believe I forgot the actor's name. Was it Steve Dash? Or was it the other guy? Because I know there was one guy that jumped through the window and then he took all the credit, when really it was the other guy that did most of the Jason stuff. I completely forgot the guy's name. But it seemed like, again, it was a bit more to the finale, because it was, I mean, hell, you got the Amy Steele literally charging Jason with a chainsaw and hits him in the arm. And she almost gets hit by a pitchfork. She's hiding under the chair and, you know, avoiding Jason left and right. And then, of course, the finale, she puts on the sweater and confuses Jason. Your mother is talking to you. Which, I don't know if you could do that in today's movie without people being, that's too silly or too stupid. But I don't know, for some reason it works in the movie. Maybe it was the way it was handled. Maybe it was the way Steve Miner directed it. Maybe it was because of the way Amy Steele played it. And then Paul comes in, helps out, and then Amy Steele's able to put the machete right on the shoulder pretty damn deep. And then, like I said, the other nitpick other than the opening is the ending, because the ending is confusing. Because what happens at the ending is Amy Steele and Paul, then the little dog comes in. I'm like, wait a minute, I thought that dog was dead. Which makes you think, oh, maybe this is a dream. Like the first film had a dream at the end, a nightmare. And then Jason pops through the window and grabs Amy Steele. Then she wakes up and she's like, where's Paul? I know there's a deleted ending where it focused on Pamela Voorhees' head that Jason has kept. Pamela Voorhees' eyes would open. I guess that was to tell us that Paul was dead. But A, that's not in the movie. And B, again, it's confusing because at the beginning of part 3, you see Jason kind of barely crawling away. Not like getting up and he's perfectly fine. He's like barely crawling away at the beginning of part 3. Why would he just leave? If he killed Paul, like where would Paul have died? You get what I mean? Because Paul takes Amy Steele out. So if she had a dream then, like why would Jason not kill Amy Steele? If Jason killed Paul, like why wouldn't he kill Amy Steele if Amy Steele was knocked out and then woke up by the people? That's what I mean. It's just, it doesn't make sense. It's confusing as fuck. Well, Paul died earlier. Well, how could he die earlier when it shows that when she put the machete in Jason's shoulder, that was real? Just at the beginning of part 3, that's where we first see Jason crawling away in that scene. What did she... I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. And people try to describe it. I'm like, wait a minute. There's that hole and that hole and that hole to pick apart. So I guess you just ignore it and just assume Paul went to take a long piss and then went back into the... where's everybody? And then hitchhiked to see Amy Steele and they're off somewhere having a party or something. But other than that, it has, like I said, it does have some fun kills. I would say the best one would be the machete to the wheelchair guy's head. Harriman Ferdini does another stand-up job on the score. I thought the cast of characters, John Furey as Paul, which, by the way, he has one of the most memorable moments when he tells the campfire story on Jason. Which, if you think of, like, slasher films, a lot of times they have someone telling a story on the campfire. That's probably the one that's done the best, or that's definitely the one that seems the most referenced when people think of it, is when Paul, John Furey's character, is saying, I'm going to tell you a story about Jason. You know, he's hungry. Jason's out there. waiting to devour. Like, the way he told that, I thought he did it very effectively. And again, it seems like anytime when people think of slasher films and people talk around a campfire, that's the scene that pops up a lot when they do like these making ofs, or when people reference it on, when they talk about slashers in general on YouTube, and that scene pops up. Again, probably the most effective campfire type of scene in a slasher film. I can't think of a one that did it better, at least in my opinion. And while I do prefer Jason in the hockey mask, which is in the next one, the sheet over the head, it did have a little bit of a creepy vibe. Like I said, it was trying to be that town that dreaded sundown type of feel to it. And, you know, I thought it worked well. Oh yeah, another person they kill is Crazy Ralph, the Harbinger of Doom, who was in the first movie, by like a garrote like, around the neck. Which I wonder in retrospect if they would have done that, because in the next one they kind of have another Harbinger of Doom where they show them the eyeball in part 3. But hey, another body count for the flick. But overall, I think it's a fun sequel. It's a solid sequel. For the reason I said, I do prefer it over the first one. It's not my favorite Friday the 13th. I would say that goes to films like 6 or 7, or yes, even Jason Goes to Hell. But I don't even think it was a guilty pleasure. I sincerely love Jason Goes to Hell, but that's just me. But either way, I thought the effects were done well, and the acting was fine. So it's too bad Amy Steele didn't come back. I would not want to see her character killed off, but that's one of the few problems I have with part 3 is Dana Kimmel is alright, but I don't think she's as strong as Amy Steele. So maybe if you took that same film, but it was Amy Steele, I think maybe it'd be a bit better. But I still really like part 3, which I'll get to sometime down the road. And then, for those who don't know, many years ago, I did review all the Friday the 13th films. They're still on the channel, so for those who want to watch my older reviews, just type Friday the 13th on my channel in the search magnifying glass area on the channel. Or just go up top and just type Friday the 13th and Rambo After Life, and you'll find them. But anyway, thanks for watching, take care, and stay tuned for more reviews and more 80s horror movies. Later.